Welcome to the regular business meeting of the Billings City Council. Before we express my appreciation to the Easter Bunny, who dropped off a replica Easter Bunny. So whoever was the representative of the Easter Bunny this evening, you have my thank you. Former Councilmember Yakowicz is the Easter Bunny's lieutenant bunny this year. So thank you, sir. All right, if you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our invocation this evening, which is by Councilmember Cheriki. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Actually, everyone, please feel free to sit down. As we prepare to make decisions with consequences that last for lifetimes, let us take a moment to reflect on the nature of making decisions. During World War II in the American military, there was a popular ditty that goes, "When in danger or in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout." Wasn't exactly, a positive attribution. Anyway, by World War II, the American Officer Corps was one of the most highly educated officer corps in recorded history. It was and remains a liberal arts education with heavy emphasis on engineering and science and math and history and management, including leadership and planning. So to run in circles, screaming and shouting, is an emotional response to danger and doubt. This can be emotionally very satisfying for the person doing the screaming and shouting, at least for the moment. However, it rarely solves problems, much less complex problems. It also fails to instill confidence among those looking for or in need of leadership out of danger. So before we are tempted to start running in circles, let us follow the difficult path to understanding the reality that we live in. Let us seek to educate ourselves and those around us. Let us learn from those who have spent their lives developing expertise in complex fields. Let us not bask in the reflected warmth of hearing our own thoughts and opinions echoed back at us. Let us challenge and examine our assumptions, especially our most closely held assumptions. Let us consider the consequences of our decisions on the lives of people who are different from ourselves, and most importantly, those who will follow in our footsteps. So let us always, always, always take a moment to reflect before we decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaw.
Here.
Gulick.
Here.
Neese.
Here.
Owen.
Here.
Joy.
Present.
Cheriki.
I'm here.
Tidswell.
Here.
Purinton.
Present.
Boyette.
Here.
Rupsis.
Here.
Mayor Cole.
Here. Our next item of business are minutes. The minutes for our March 28th meeting are actually pending. So that means we do have the March 14th minutes before us, however. Is there a motion or corrections? Councilmember Neese?
I move that we approve the minutes for March 14th.
So move, and second by Councilmember Boyette. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And Councilmember Shaw is attending by Zoom, has been under the weather, but glad that she could join us. So Councilmember Shaw, I'm not going to be good about seeing your little postage stamp on the screen. So if at any point this evening that you need to be heard, you're not going to be interrupting us if you just shout out. And if anybody sees her hand up, please alert me, or if she's waving frantically, okay? All right, thank you very much. Our next item up is our council courtesies. Does anybody have council courtesies for us this evening? Seeing none, we do have originally 3 proclamations. I was unable to locate one, so we have two, but I do want to alert you to the other. The first one up is the Great American Cleanup Month proclamation, which reads as follows. Whereas the Great American Cleanup, sponsored by the national nonprofit organization Keep America Beautiful, is the country's largest community improvement organization program and involves more than 20,000 communities and 1.5 million volunteers and participants each spring. And whereas Bright and Beautiful is a proud affiliate of Keep America Beautiful and encourages people to take action to improve and beautify Billings and Yellowstone County, so our community can be clean, green, and a beautiful place to live. And whereas the City of Billings seeks to protect its natural resources and bring people together to transform public spaces into beautiful places. And whereas the City of Billings recognizes its commitment to engage citizens, civic and government officials, and business leaders to work together to reduce littering and beautify Billings and other nearby communities. And whereas Bright and Beautiful and the City of Billings are committed to elevating the importance of volunteerism and motivating everyone in our community to become stewards of the environment, particularly on Saturday, April 23rd, 2022, during Billings Great American Cleanup Day. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim the month of April to be Keep America Beautiful, Great American Cleanup Month, and call upon our citizens to join in activities that promote responsible environmental stewardship and help us renew our commitment to building a better world today and for future generations. We also have this evening the 911 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week proclamation that reads as follows. This week is a time to show our appreciation and to recognize that our health, safety, and well-being are often dependent on the commitment and steadfast devotion of public safety telecommunicators. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of law enforcement, firefighters, and medical personnel is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the county, city, 911 communications center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, these dedicated men and women are more than anonymous voices on the telephone line. They're public safety telecommunications professionals who quickly and efficiently manage emergency calls. Each of these professionals exhibits compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job when assisting those in need. And whereas emergency responders rely on these professionals to make critical decisions, obtain information, and quickly dispatch the proper resources. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link to our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators and the City County 911 Center are unseen first responders trusted with the lives of citizens. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are invaluable to public safety efforts, and each of these dedicated men and women deserves our heartfelt appreciation. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim the week of April 10 through 16, 2022 as 911 Public Safety Telecommunicator Week in recognition of the men and women of City County 911 Dispatch Center whose diligence and professionalism keep our citizens and first responders safe. Thank you very much to the men and women of the 911 Dispatch Center, often unseen heroes. Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed in the back, Joni Tooley from Bright and Beautiful here. I was wondering if we can bring her forward to talk about their Great American Cleanup Month.
Absolutely. Joni, would you like to give us an update? And with former Councilmember Mike Yakowicz, garbage picker-uppers extraordinary, both of them.
I was just going to say my former councilman Mike Yakowicz, who is also community volunteer extraordinaire, we have managed to nab him as a member of the board of Bright and Beautiful, the most recent addition to our mighty board of directors. So I know you join in my joy over that.
We were struggling a lot.
That we needed him. Anyway, I'm very happy for just a moment to tell you that things are going very well for the promotion of our Great American Cleanup for 2022. We've already got 55 different teams signed up to fan out all over the beautiful city of Billings Billings and beyond into Yellowstone County to pick up a winter's worth of litter that's accumulated. And I know we'll all be much happier and brighter and beautiful without that litter. I wanted to also thank the city of Billings for once again donating for our use these enormous roll-off dumpsters for the Heights, for downtown, and for the West End. So it'll be much easier for our teams that are volunteering in those areas to be able to do away with those large bags. Mike said, be sure to mention some statistics. And the one stat I have readily at hand is that last year, the dumpsters that were available, again, they're just during opening weekend, which is Earth Day, April 22nd through Sunday, the 24th. That last year we collected in those dumpsters on that one weekend 3.63 tons of litter in our residential areas. So anyway, we certainly hope to double that amount this year. Hope we do. And we appreciate all of your efforts. I know I've seen many of you out on cleanup day doing your bit for Great American Cleanup. Excited and looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Yakowicz, did you want to add anything?
1 minute. No. Thank you all for your service. And actually, I know all of you have picked up litter and do pick up litter. You are exemplary leaders. Mayor, yourself, I know you'll be leading the charge on South Billings Boulevard on the 23rd. I'll be happy to work with you on that as well. You and your wife are always set a great example. I walk in with Mr. Kukulski. He's always picking up litter, setting an example for me. And just honored to work with Joni and the whole board. They have a dynamic board, and the amazing statistics of trees they helped recycle with the city, to working, they're going to be working with high school kids in cleaning up. It's just amazing. I would like you to give her a round of applause for her hard work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, thank you to both, and thank you to all the volunteers. Let's get as many people out as we can this year. Thank you very much. Our third proclamation, I apologize, I was not able to locate, so I'll do it on a more informal basis, but it's for Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. During the month of April, as most of us know, the problem of child abuse and neglect in our community is very serious. And unfortunately, as a result of COVID-19, the numbers have gone up even more than they were in the years before. So it's a very, very serious problem. I do want to proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month and remind everybody that the Family Tree Center sponsors this annual pinwheel planting and awards ceremony. This year it's April 21st. April 21st at 12 o'clock on the courthouse lawn. If you haven't attended that, I encourage you to. It takes about half an hour. It's beautiful to see all those blue pinwheels in recognition of the problem of child abuse and neglect. So come out, support the pinwheel planting award ceremony on April 21st at noon on the county courthouse. Okay, with that, we'll move on to council reports. Do we have any council reports from organizations that we serve on behalf of the council? Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Community Development Board met this month and on Tuesday afternoon, and there has been a change. One applicant that had received an award for a substantial amount of money changed their plans and have turned the money will not be used for that applicant. So there's a tremendous amount of money that's still available from based on the needs assessment and also the criteria and the fast track system that council approved. So there's still money there available for those nonprofits and other organizations that are filling the needs that are identified by the Community Development Board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And if you have more questions, I'm sure contact you or Brenda Beckett in our Community Development Division of the Planning Department. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Any other council reports? Don't see any. We'll just turn over to Chris Kukulski. Chris, do you have anything for our city administrator report?
A couple things briefly, and we'll get into more detail on item 2. There's just a small tweak Debbie will talk about for regular agenda item 2. It's that we went back and forth and in the end did not revise anything to section 2-580. So you might have picked up on that in the title. It mentions that we made some adjustments there and we did not in that section. So she'll cover that in her presentation. And then Mike Whitaker will cover a tweak on item 5 to that resolution. Other than that, there's no ex parte communication and we're set to go.
Thank you, Chris. And I should have, under council courtesies, given a shout out to Councilmember Gulick for his work in bringing the Ed Spec presentations to our community. I thought that was very well received, a very good crowd at the from the community at the Babcock, and then with city staff then the next day as well. So thank you, Councilmember Gulick and the Billings Architectural Association and other sponsors of that event. If nothing else, Chris, we'll move on to public comment on non-public hearing agenda items. So if anybody is with us this evening who would like to comment on item 1, and that's the consent agenda and any of the sub items, this is your opportunity. Everything else on the agenda has a public hearing, and so you need to hold your comments on those other items till we get to the public hearing on that item. But if you have anything that you would like to offer on the consent agenda, and that's items 1A through 1J, this is your opportunity. Just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address up front. Is there any public comment on item 1? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment on item 1 and move into the consent agenda. First, by asking if there are any items that an individual council member would like to have a separate vote on. Are there any separations from the consent agenda? Councilmember Neese.
I move to approve the items of the consent agenda as submitted with the exception, well, there's no exception, so as is submitted.
Okay, and second by Councilmember Parrington. Discussion now, including any questions on those items. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, I had a question regarding the item B, the agreement with the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department to provide the data processing services. I don't know if there's someone, Chris, there's someone who can answer this question. I kind of talked to you a little bit about before the meeting, but we always hear that there's, we're kind of, the police have a tough time having server services in order to store their data and things like that. And here we're actually providing services to the county, and I think we're going out and buying more services. Do we know if this agreement is putting any additional stress on the city where we have to go out? And I see Dave in the background, maybe he can answer that, as far as whether or not, one is it maybe if we didn't have this agreement, we wouldn't have to be going out, we could actually handle our own city needs, or two, if we're having to go out for services, are we making sure that this agreement covers the cost of all these new services we have to buy?
Mayor and Council, Councilmember Neese, actually, our IT director is here, Dave Watterson, so I'm going to let him take a crack at that. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilmember Neese. Since early 90s, we have co-opted with Yellowstone County, where the city has, it originally started on what was called an AS400 system, where we utilize the very same software in both Yellowstone County, the jail, fire, police records, mobile. We all utilize the same software system. It allows us to share our data, and interoperability is greatly increased. We provide that service. The amount of horsepower, the amount of data, the storage or resources to provide that service is not impacting other areas that you're referencing. It is a capacity that we have had for, again, 20, 25 years, and it's business as usual. We have someone on call 24/7 to support both city and police if they Yellowstone County and Police if they should need anything. It's 99% of that is city, but if we go down or have any problems, we do that to make sure Yellowstone County stays online and up and working. They have their own people for managing like the hardware and stuff in their mobile and desktops and stuff, but it is not a strain on our resources at all. And being an internal service fund, it actually is very beneficial to IT and to other departments within the city because it's my only external cash flow into the city. And so actually we perceive it as a very good relationship that benefits us both. So.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions or comments relating to the consent agenda? There are a number of items from on the consent agenda from our Public Works Department. So I have a question for Debbie Melling. Debbie, do you recognize the person who is the feature on the Yellowstone Valley Women's Magazine?
I do not.
You do not? Okay. If anybody has not seen that, that person, whoever it is, must be Debbie's long-lost twin. So yeah, striking resemblance. Congratulations on the small chance it's actually you. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? We have a motion before us. Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, I just want to thank Andy for clarifying and making the changes in the revolving loan program that we discussed the last time that was rather complicated. So Andy did a great job as far as interpreting what the council member said.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Andy. Good. If nothing else, we'll proceed to a vote on the motion to approve the consent agenda. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And I saw Councilmember Shaw's mouth move to that. If in opposition, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Concludes the consent agenda. Our second item up, Tony, would you read item number 2, please?
Item number 2, public hearing and first reading ordinance, amending Billings, Montana City Code, sections 2-580 through 2-587, Public Works Board. Staff recommends approval. Action, approval, or disapproval of staff recommendation.
Thank you very much. Our celebrity Debbie Melling is our presenter this evening.
Oh, good. This is... Okay, so I've talked to a couple of you about this, but basically, Public Works has 2 boards that we basically are administrators for, Public Works Board and the Traffic Control Board. And so what we're looking at doing after talking to both boards is creating just one board out of these, and I'll give you some reasons why. So the Public Works Board is defined in 3 of the sections of City Code, and it's basically, it says all things Public Works. There are 5 members on it, and it's not defined as to who those members have to be. The one thing that is statutorily required of the Public Works Board is that they review the system development fees. So the state law says that we have to have a board review our impact fees, and they provide that service. So the Traffic Control Board is also in the same section of City Code. It says all things traffic. The kind of strange thing is that traffic is a part of Public Works. So it's kind of weird to kind of separate that. There are 5 members of that board as well, and that particular board has several members defined, like the judge, who really there's not much we do that would affect the judge. School District 2 has someone come. A lot of times they have their busing coordinator, which has been really helpful. I'd anticipate having them continue to participate with us, and then the police department has somebody on that board. So those are defined, though, by the city code. Our recommendation would be to make it a 7-person board, and also expand their scope of duties. If they're working on both the Public Works and then also pulling in the traffic control, they would be able to see maybe a bigger picture of things. Often most of our projects affect more than just one section of Public Works. So this gives us the ability to kind of look at the bigger picture, a more consistent approach, and then also, like I said, that advisory committee. It would help us with our administrative capacity, as we've mentioned before. Of course, it takes time to administer these boards. And so having one board provide all this service would be a better use of some of our time, of our staff's time. Also, I believe the recommendations that we can make will be better because, again, it'll be more of a all-encompassing approach to everything. So, wow, that didn't show up well, but I'm not going to read all that. It's in your packet. But the recommendation would really, what you can see, there's one attachment in there and it shows all of the sections and what we took out of one and put into the other. Basically has everything in it, so we just combined the two. And tonight has a public hearing. If after the public hearing, council wants to approve it, then we'd approve it tonight. We'll come back on the 25th for second reading, and then May 25th, the boards would be combined. Like I said, we have talked to both boards. They're excited about this. Both boards have said they want to deal with bigger, more things, and so this is a way to meet that need. So this is my older slides. So the one change that Chris mentioned was that we originally changed 2-580. We changed it back, so there is no change to 2-580. So this will impact 2-581 through 587 instead of 2-580. So that's the only change.
Thank you. Debbie, can I just ask, I believe the total number of people on the two boards exceeds 7. So do we have a process for winnowing it down? We give everybody a knife and put them in the room and whoever comes out, or do we have a more refined process in mind?
Right, I'm picturing the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Probably not going to work very well. We actually only have 8 on those boards. We really have a hard time filling both of those boards. So we've had some people just drop off. We just added one more person, and so we're at 8. And one of those individuals, their term is coming up here soon at the end of the year. So we'll basically be back down to 7.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Purington and Councilmember Owen?
The only question I have was that one. Plus, I just forgot it, but no, I remembered it because I wrote it down. So are you going to meet every other month as you have been, or are you going to meet monthly now since you've established this new board?
So I anticipate meeting every other month for now. If we are seeing more and more business come up and we need more time, we'll go to every month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Owen.
That was a perfect setup because that was going to be the first part of my 2-part question, so knocked it out. So if you all are planning on continuing to meet every other month, there was some discussion on email about the kind of elimination of the other parties, the judge and the school district and that. Do you think it would be a significant burden to the staff if this resolution would be amended to say, maybe at least twice a year, this board have a very specific meeting on traffic control and enforcement, and specifically invite a judge, someone from the city attorney's office, the school district, someone from the police department, and really focus on, traffic rules, traffic laws, infractions, fees, trends that we're seeing. Are people speeding through school zones, whipping around buses? What's the enforcement side of traffic? Could we do that twice a year without a significant burden?
So I anticipate that traffic control will be more often than twice a year. It's one of the biggest concerns that we have in our community, and it's one of the things we talk about more than anything else at the boards, both boards actually right now. The reason that we recommended taking those off is because it won't always be a good use of time to have people there.
Agreed.
And so what I had responded is that we would invite probably police department and school district every month, just because there's so many things that impact both of those. And then certainly, if we wanted to define twice a year, I think it's going to happen more often than twice a year with traffic, just because it is such a big issue that we deal with.
I guess I'm wondering if maybe the reason these entities aren't attending is because there isn't a specific focused reason for them to be there. I mean, if I'm a judge doing a gazillion and a half hearings a day, I need to know why I'm being invited to a meeting. And so a specific agenda on enforcement or reviewing the code, I'm wondering if we can find a way to make good use of our partners' time.
Sure, and I will say school district and police department come every month. They never miss. The judge, I'm not sure how beneficial this board will be. We could certainly invite and make sure we have something. I don't know her schedule, whether lunch meetings work or not.
And
so I think that's been an issue.
Someone from the prosecutor's office?
Certainly, we could invite them as well.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Denise?
Thank you, Mayor. Debbie, the Traffic Control Board, you said all things traffic. Is that just automobile traffic, or does that include pedestrian and bicycle traffic?
Right now, it includes multimodal. We deal with all of it.
So I am concerned that School District 2 and maybe, at least School District 2, because quite often we find at the schools that they put the schools in, they don't have pedestrian routes to their school. And I think that's important that this board be aware of those and really engage the school district in making sure the city is aware of, what routes need to be created in the city for the students. And so I would hope that, like Jennifer suggested, having these partners come, that school board would actually be very influential in helping us determine what routes need to be prioritized and what their future plans are for putting schools in, so we can make sure our development is going in for those areas.
Sure, and the only difference is whether it's in the code or whether it's not in the code. I mean, we took it out of the code because we were going to do it on an invitation basis when those things come up, instead of just saying you're on the board. So that's why we made that recommendation. If we want to statutorily require certain members, we could certainly do that.
I see. No, I'm not so sure. I think we need to statutorily require them, but I would like to make sure that we, like Jennifer said, we have something, and again, I don't know if it'd be amendment to the statute to make sure that they're invited on a certain periodic time, so these certain issues are actually addressed and handled. And I'm assuming the board would work on that, and hopefully they will, but we don't really oversee the boards. We just get the reports and that. So I don't know really how to address that, or whether or not we need to actually make some changes. I mean, I agree, merging the boards, and not just this board, other boards, and maybe eliminating some boards that the city may not need, but I'm all for the change on this. I'd like to make sure we're not losing any services or anything in the city by combining the boards.
Did you want to comment, and then Councilmember Rupsis and Purington?
I can't just comment in that we use these boards to help bounce ideas off of them and get impact from the citizens, and also to give that information out so that these people are out talking about it. So these, because they are, schools and walking and pedestrian facilities and traffic control, they're such big issues with us that they're going to be common at all of our meetings. My guess is they're going to be one of the biggest topics.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Rupsis?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, my comment was very comparable to Councilmember Nice's, just the integration of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We have one of those, and they're dealing with a lot of these same issues. And so how do you imagine they may interface, or have they ever, with the Traffic Control Board?
So not so much with the Traffic Control Board, with staff. We go to BPAC quite a bit. We get invited probably 3 times a year to come and talk about specific issues. So we do, on a staff level, communicate with them, and then, of course, bring it back to our boards as well.
Sorry, it seems like if we're going to invite the school district or whatever to talk about specifically pedestrian-related issues, that would be something that we would maybe look for opportunities to be more integrated with that board.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor Purington, and then we'll move toward the open our public hearing. Councilmember Purington?
So just one thing, Public Works does a great job of advertising to the residents about trash pickup, snow plowing, and all of that. So I would hope that they would include some of these traffic issues that we have with, I don't know how that's handled through the city, but Public Works always does a great job in getting the word out to the public. So I don't know if there's a means to incorporate that into part of this board work, whether we're dealing with just people going through yellow lights or speeders or whatever it is.
Sure, we can look at that and focus on some of our Facebook posts and social media.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw, I just want to make sure that you did not have any questions. I can't see you. You don't have your hand up. Kevin Iflin says so. Very good. We'll open up for public hearing then. On item number 2, the possible combination of the Public Works Board and the Traffic Control Board. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on item number 2? If so, please come forward. Ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address. Any public comment on item number 2? Public hearing then is closed because no one has come forward. Back to council. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve and amend Billings Montana Code Sections 2-580 through 2-587 on the first reading as recommended by staff.
Second.
I saw Councilmember Purington. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Motion is for approval. Councilmember Joy.
I think there was a correction. It's 2-581 through 2-587, not 0.
Yeah, so the motion includes that correction, I'm assuming, Councilmember Boyette and Councilmember Purington. They both indicate to the affirmative, so thank you for reminding us of that. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Motion is for approval. Item number 2, consistent with staff recommendation with the exception of removing the reference to section 580 in the title. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Councilmember Shaw indicated she voted in favor of the motion, so it is unanimous. Tony, would you read item number 3?
Item number 3, public hearing and second final reading ordinance for zone change 1010. A zone change located at 2204 Bench Boulevard. Michael Holland, owner, Lucas Holland, agent. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 criteria. Action, approval or disapproval of the Zoning Commission recommendation.
Thank you very much. Our presenter this evening is Planner Karen Hostman. Karen.
Thank you.
Her technical assistant is working on bringing up the PowerPoint.
I could.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is a second reading of Zone Change 1010 from Neighborhood Office to Corridor Mixed Use 1, which is to allow a former vet clinic to operate as a dog daycare and grooming facility on 2204 Bench Boulevard. Oops, I went too fast, sorry. The Zoning Commission recommended approval, and the City Council voted unanimously on the first reading at their March 28th meeting to approve the zone change. The recommendation this evening is to approve on second reading. That was very fast. That concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, very efficient. Yes. Are there any questions for Karen? If not, we still, until we change this, we still have a public hearing, so we'll open it up for public hearing on second reading. If anybody would like to comment on item number 3, this is your opportunity. Just as before, I ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Mike Holland, and thank you again for allowing me to address the council. I don't have a lot to add in addition to what you already know about our request for zone change, but I do have a couple of points that I would like to make to point out how this.
Apologize, that's our timer, but you're good to go.
I'm not over time, okay. A couple of points to make why I feel that this facility is an asset to the community and to the city of Billings. Number one, Anna Norwood, who is co-owner and groomer at this facility, has made a career already out of pet dog grooming, and her daughter is also in training to do the same. So her ambition is to complete her business in her time and to pass it on to her daughter. So this is a long-term proposition, maybe another 40 years in addition to the 45 that I've been there. The other point I would like to make is we are well aware of the importance of education and the schools in our area. And I can say that over the years I've participated in, might not have the name right, but it's career days where students from schools were allowed to go to business, and in my case, my profession of veterinary medicine, to see if they were truly interested in that being their career. And I can truly say that over the years that I've been there, there's been 5 students who were also my employees who were accepted into the School of Veterinary Medicine. So I feel that it's just an essential part for long-term proposition of being continuing this facility in the pet industry to be a part of the community. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Holland, I'm just going to put a little pitch here. One thing we're trying to do is encourage people to live downtown. It's a great way to create energy and economic development in downtown. An essential element to that, in my opinion, is being able to have facilities for pets. 60–80% of Billings has somewhere in there has a dog. So if we can't provide for their dogs downtown, we're not going to be able to attract people to live downtown. Part of that would be having an urban dog park, again, in my opinion, but also pet care and dog overnight boarding and doggy daycare facilities while people are working. So I'm putting that little bug in your ear, and I know you're kind of got one foot out the door, but if you could pass that on, if you agree, let's get a good downtown facility. So you might want to expand from the Heights at some point downtown, and I'll be there to cut your ribbon, okay?
Well, I think that, you know, I can't speak for Petlantis, but that is what they were doing by coming to my facility, is expanding, because they've had a facility on Central, and they've been there for a number of years, well established, got a good reputation. They're trying to expand into the Heights. Now, what they do beyond that, I can't speak for them, but I can say that in my judgment, they are extremely knowledgeable in running a business. They're committed to their long-term longevity. I don't see why, you know, it could be, but again, I can't speak for them, but I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it, and I understand the importance, because that's what I've made my career out of, understanding of the need for working in the pet industry, and we want to just continue on as long as we can, even though my foot's partway out the door.
Okay, all righty.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other public comment on item number 3?
Hello, my name is Bob McGuire. I live at 1941 Dogwood. That's in Billings Heights. I've been going to Dr. Mike Holland for all my pet care since 1986, so it's been quite a while. We've had like 5 or 6 animals with him. And so it's very convenient for me where I live, up about 1.5 miles away from... I'll speed it up. Boy, you guys are like in TV. Hurry up, Bob. Come on, hurry up.
Time flies when you're having fun. Go ahead.
So anyway, I was just going to say that it's been very convenient for me. I live about 1.25 miles from Dr. Holland's old place, now Petlantis, and we've already taken our animal there once for pet grooming. I can tell you these people are very professional. They're very good at what they do, and they're just really nice folks. So I would like to be able to go there in the future with my other animals' needs for things like that, and we just wish that you guys would go ahead and approve this, and so they can stay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comment on item number 3? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period, the public hearing on item number 3. Back to council. Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted 2 public hearings, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve the second reading of Zone Change 1010 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as approved by City Council on the first reading March 28, 2022.
I saw Councilmember Gulick down there. I hope that's okay. We'll have a co-second for our other Heights representatives. Councilmember Gulick will call. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, this is a great neighborhood business, and I appreciate them bringing this to us and making sure that they can continue this business in this neighborhood. I would ask that maybe our city look at the code, because this probably would have been better fit as an NMU instead of a CMU one. However, I do not want to force the issue on this particular. I think this business needs to continue. Because if I understand correctly, it was just one of their services, prevented it from being NMU. And I think that that's something that I would ask the city to maybe look at that, because it would probably provide in the future, if we have these type of businesses, whether it's downtown or somewhere else, that it would actually fit within the neighborhood a little bit better. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Don't see any. So the vote is, or the motion is for approval, consistent with the staff recommendation and the first reading approval. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. I see Councilmember Shaw and all others on board, but anybody voting nay? If so, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Brings us to item number 4. Tony, would you read item number 4?
Item number 4, public hearing and second final reading ordinance for zone change 1011, a zone change located south of Grand Avenue and 60th Street West. Buffalo Crossing LLC owner, WWC engineering agent. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 criteria. Action, approval or disapproval of Zoning Commission recommendation.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Nicole Cromwell, our zoning coordinator. It's yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a second reading public hearing. Current zoning of the property is rural residential 3. The proposed zoning through the planned neighborhood development process is neighborhood 3, neighborhood 2, and then mixed residential 2. Here's the subject property. You can see kind of the existing zoning. There is an in-holding property that will not be annexed to the city and is not part of this zone change, but is preserved within the property itself. Go ahead. Here's an aerial of the property. You can see the development of Foxtail Village subdivision to the north of Grand Avenue, Trails West subdivision to the east. Byerly Drain does come across the east side of the property, and then another piece of the Byerly Drain is also along the south side of the property. Go ahead. So in planned neighborhood developments, we request at the zoning stage to have the framework, the master plan layout of the proposed zone districts and as much of the street network as possible. We do and will require the developer meet the requirements of maximum block perimeter, connectivity to adjacent parcels when it's physically there. So you'll see across the bottom is Stockman Avenue. That's the very southern east-west route. There'll also be another connection to the south parcel, not east-west, but directly to the south. And there'll probably be another connection to the west. So most of the property, 19 acres of the total 33 acres, will be in suburban neighborhood zoning, which is single family only, on lots that have at least 65 feet of street frontage, either public or private street frontage. The next level is the neighborhood 2, which is mid-century neighborhood, and that allows 1 or 2 family dwellings, and for each structure you have to have 50 feet of street frontage, public or private. And then the mixed residential 2, which is across the north part of the property and then down some of the east side of the property, and that allows 2 family up to 8 unit buildings. And any building with 3 or more units requires 50 feet of street frontage, public or private. And there are some additional site and building requirements in that zone district that you don't have in the N2 or the N3 zones. And then, of course, we require a public one zone designation in every PND that comes through of at least 2% of the net area. The applicant has proposed 5 acres in a linear park, and that goes across the north side of the property, down the east side of the property along the Byerly Drain, and then across the south end of the property. Okay, go ahead. On March 28th, the City Council had its first reading, public hearing, and voted to approve this zone change on a 10-to-1 vote. The Zoning Commission recommended approval to you and believes that this PND meets all of the criteria for zone change in the city of Billings. And I think there might be one more slide, I'm not sure. And this is the subject property from Grand Avenue looking south. On the left of the screen there, you'll see the existing Trails West subdivision. I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Before we take some questions, I just want to make an announcement because if I don't do it now, I'll forget. Our clerk, Tony Keener, just alerted me that, as many of you know, we're expecting a major storm coming in this evening. There's a storm weather or storm warning for midnight up to, last I saw, 8 to 14 inches and some very cold temperatures, blizzard. And so School District 2, she tells me, has canceled school for tomorrow. So if you're watching this and that's of interest to you, you might just keep track of on the internet or the news if that impacts you. So,
well, hopefully we won't be here at midnight.
Let's hope. Yes, if we are here at midnight, we'll have to camp out for several days. So I saw some questions or some hands down here. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, this will obviously do a traffic study after this.
Yes.
Can you give me an idea of what a traffic study, what it costs and what it'll actually do for us?
Well, the traffic study is paid for by the developer. The developer generally works with Public Works staff to talk about the scope of that study, which intersections would be included, what do they need additional traffic counts on this section of Grand Avenue or any of those adjacent intersections to make a better traffic impact study. Once that scope is approved or agreed to between the developer and the city, the developer goes out and hires a traffic engineer and has the study done. And part of that study has recommendations from that traffic engineer to the city about management of those adjacent intersections or streets or recommended mitigation. And if mitigation is not feasible because this is a small strip of Grand Avenue, what the proportionate share of this development should be in cash to the city to be reserved to do those nearby traffic improvements in the future. So generally, this is just a shot in the dark about how much these cost. And I think it really depends on the complexity of the development and the complexity of the traffic environment. But generally in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $50,000 for a traffic study.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Nicole? Councilor Printer?
Well, the developers are back there and they're looking at each other, so I don't know if it's the appropriate time for them maybe to comment on that. That was the question.
Sure, and also to make any other presentation they had at the conclusion.
Right, well, this is a public hearing, so I'm sure they'll have something.
They'll have an opportunity, but if our developers representative wants to make any comment, feel free on any topic related to the application.
I'll sit up here in case you have questions.
And go ahead and come on to the mic and just tell us your name and address.
Doug Wild, I guess more than anything, I'll just sit up here in case you have questions for me, but I don't have anything more to share with you. I think we covered it really well last time.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, I do have a question for you. Do you have that map up that showed the plot?
The zoning map?
The zoning map?
Our technical advisor will have it up soon.
Fire him.
I'm not sure what happened this evening.
Don't say things like that.
Okay, let's see if we can go backwards.
I'm trying.
We go nothing but forward in this city.
We don't have a reverse here.
He wanted to see the pride.
Then maybe I need to do it and go backwards.
Councilman Neese, can you take a stab at your question while we look for the
he's
map?
pulling that up, we can get that up and take a look at it, because one of the comments, one of the things you said as you were talking about, you said you were talking about the South Street, I forget the name of the street that runs south, or they're connecting. It says when
Stockman Avenue.
Stockman Avenue. It says when they're connection there, you require connections, which I think that's a good idea, and I think the city should do that. But if you look at the development to the west there, and I brought this up the last time, there's a pedestrian walkway there that we're not being connected to. So,
And Councilman Neese, I think you said to the west. I bet you meant to the east.
I'm sorry, you're right, to the east.
Go ahead.
To the east, there's a pedestrian walkway to the east. And so I'm wondering, when you take into account for these, when you say when physical connections are there, do you only look at streets, or do you look at pedestrian walkways and things like that as well?
I think we look for every opportunity there is where it is physically feasible to do so. The Byerly Drain is not the Cove Ditch or the High Ditch, which are very narrow. They're not very deep, and can, with approval of those ditch companies, you can get a pedestrian crossing there. The most recent one that I can recall is the one that was done across a drain between Annafeld subdivision and the Harmony Meadows subdivision to the east. And that was very similar to this, but it connected developments of literally hundreds of dwelling units. So that was, it felt it was necessary and needed to make that project have more pedestrian connections. This here, although Trails West is going to end up with 200 units, and I'm not sure how many units will be here. And I think the map is a little deceiving. The length of this property, I believe, it's less than a half a mile from north to south, much less than a half a mile, which is, in pedestrian talk, a half a mile is a nice walk. So people crossing and going all the way down to Stockman to go east on that end of the project is not kind of out of the question.
Okay, quick follow-up on that, Mayor?
Go ahead.
So I noticed in the development agreement, there was additional requirement going across the Barley Drain to the south. So is the drain to the south just not as, or is it easier to build a bridge, a traffic bridge across that it travels with automobiles versus the pedestrian across the eastern side of the Barley Ditch?
I'm not sure are you talking about a pedestrian crossing south of this project?
The development agreement requires a street connecting the properties to the south. And so I believe the Byerly Drain runs to along the south of this property, correct?
Right, but it's not the main Byerly Drain.
Okay.
It's kind of like a feeder.
So it's a much smaller.
Much smaller.
Okay, that helps answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Nicole? No? Okay. Any other questions? We'll finish up with Councilmember Neese and then move to our public hearing.
Thank you. I actually had a question for the developer. I think we talked about this the last time, about that in-hold there and the easement that he has there with the right-of-way to get to his property. Have you had any more discussions with him regarding maybe utilizing or offering him street access easement to it versus the right-of-way easement that he has today?
We haven't had any more conversation with him concerning any of those.
Okay, thank you very much. Open up for public comment for the public hearing on item number 4. Now, the zone change 1011, Buffalo Crossing zone change. If anybody'd like to comment on that, please come forward. Just ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Any public comment on item number 4? Don't see anybody, and nobody is online, so public hearing is closed. Now discussion. Councilmember Purington.
Having conducted 2 public hearings, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve the second reading for zone change 1011 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as approved by City Council on the first reading, March 28, 2022.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Councilmember Boyette. Discussion on the motion? Councilmember Gillick.
Thank you. And again, we're dealing with zoning now, and I will vote in favor of the motion, but I guess like Councilmember Neese, connectivity is really important for our neighborhoods, and when I look at the Byerly Drain, it's 100-foot wide. It's not huge though. I mean, it's not a big deal to have a causeway and bridge there. It wouldn't be fair for the current developer to alone be responsible for paying for such a thing, but I really think that should be considered when they come forward with the subdivision regs, or the subdivision plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comment on the motion? Motion is for approval. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that my vote's going to be the same as the last time. As we talked to and looked at this last time, and we hear again today, I don't think the developer did enough due diligence on this property to really fully mitigate the concerns of the neighborhood. I think that when we look at the map, we're going to be pushing the kids to the north to go to school along an arterial route. We'll probably, more likely, they'll go south along the route that's not arterial. And it'll just take a little longer to get around to school and things like that. The connectivity, I think Councilman Gulick mentioned, I think we really need to look at that, and it wouldn't be that difficult, but it is something that we as a city have to, and the planning have to actually put out before. As you said, it's probably not fair to make them build it all. There was the other subdivision that was built before there, and they had an option there that we probably should have had that in the future plans. And I think that, and again, when I look at this, when I look at the zoning, I don't think it's sensible to me to go from a low density to immediate high density. I think some of the characteristics of the property maybe lead it to be that way, but I still think there was more work that could have been done with the neighbors to satisfy some of their their complaints and the enjoyment of their private property. And I think we need to consider that how these developments going into there actually fit into there. And for that reason, I don't think it fits the 10 criteria. I don't think it is a good fit for the neighborhood. I think it's a fair fit. It's close, but I don't like to put in a square peg in a round hole. I'd like to make sure that it fits well with there. So I hope that we see developers look at these things and really take a look at what the neighbors really, how they enjoy their property, and maybe really lessen the impact that they have in the enjoyment of their property as they go to develop these properties in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion on the motion?
Your Honor, I have a comment.
Yeah, please, Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Just listening, can you all hear me?
Yes, sound very well.
Just listening to this discussion a little bit, I just wanted to remind council that this package does meet our development requirements and what we've said we're looking for. So, but we can change that if that isn't what this council wants to see, or we want to see, different paths for connectivity. I think we need to look at our procedures and what's bringing us forward these applications. But I just wanted to say, I sometimes get a little frustrated when council says, let's throw this back on the developers, but they're bringing us plans that we've said meet what we want. So if it's not what we want, then let's change that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion on the motion? I'm just going to make two quick comments. One, on the issue of connectivity. I also agree it's very important. I don't think we can require it as part of zoning, but as part of annexation, we should always look at that. And in a perfect world, we would have a better idea of what that would have cost. My gut tells me it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And whether it's fair or not, I don't know. But as part of annexation process, we still potentially could require that, and it would be nice to at least have some very basic information about that in a perfect world, but not reason enough to say no to this, in my opinion. The other thing is sort of just a request to Wyeth Friday, our planning director, when it comes to subdivision time on this. In a SIA, I think it's going to be very important that trail be required to be curvilinear. When you're talking about a quarter-mile trail, if it's a straight shot, it's really unnatural. Just give it a little bit of curve, and so you can only see a few hundred yards. It makes a world of difference aesthetically. So that would be my design suggestion and request. With that, any other discussion on the motion? Don't see anything, so we'll move to a vote. The motion is for approval. Item number 4 on second reading. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Councilmember Neese voted in opposition. All other members of the council voted in favor of the motion. Item number 5. Tony, would you read item number 5?
Item number 5, public hearing and resolution authorizing the disposal of 9 parcels and donation of 3 parcels of parkland located in Terrace Estates subdivision, third filing. Staff recommends approval. Action, approval, or disapproval of staff recommendation.
Mike, you've changed. Mark Jarvis, our park planner, is our presenter this evening.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're coming before you tonight to discuss the disposal of 12 parcels of parkland within the recently de-annexed Terrace Estates third filing. Oh, there it goes. Okay. As with parkland, it's rather unique when it comes to disposal. We can't vacate it like streets or lots. It has to be disposed of by ordinance through sale, exchange, or donation. So this would be the process that we would go through. We would hold a public hearing, which is scheduled for this evening, to receive public comment on the disposal of that parkland. Council would then vote on a resolution giving authority for staff to proceed with that disposal. If you approve that, we would advertise a request for public bids. Those public bids would be open and read publicly, and then they would come before council to approve the best and most responsive bid. Also, the council, as part of the resolution, can vote to donate land to other governmental agencies without them going through the building process. So how this item relates to the land use, The property was originally platted in 1982, and the property was de-annexed by the City Council in 2017. And because there was no intent to develop the property as originally platted by the developer, there were no improvements and no roads were constructed. In 2021, the landowners got preliminary plat approval from the Board of County Commissioners to replat the property, which changed from 78 lots down to 4 lots plus parkland. This platting redesigns the parkland, which is the need for the land exchange with the developer. So a condition of the county's preliminary plat approval requires that the parkland exchange be completed prior to granting final plat approval. So if the land exchange is approved and finalized, the developer can seek final plat approval from the county. Without approval, that wouldn't be able to occur. So, as I'll show you on a slide here in just a second, the donation of parkland to Yellowstone County, as I mentioned earlier, is a provision within the city ordinance to allow that, and it will be necessary for the county to receive that land to improve Alkali Creek Road. This is just an aerial view of the Terrace Estates third filing. As you can see, the development around it. And the parkland is kind of centered through the center of that land, going from east to west. This is another view of the Terrace Estates third filing as it was de-annexed. The developer would like to receive or acquire the 9 parcels that are shown in red. They would also like to, as part of that, exchange the 4 parcels that you see in green to acquire those 9 parcels. So the rationale for disposal of the parkland is to allow the developer to reconfigure the lots from 78 down to 4. It's also a condition of county preliminary plat approval. It allows continuous access to all the parkland along the Alkali Creek corridor within the property. And it aggregates the parkland on the east end of the property for potential improvement. And on the east end, it also protects and allows greater access for public works to a critical utility easement there. And it provides the 3 needed parkland parcels to the county to improve the road. So with that, I'm here to answer questions. I just want to make 2 comments. The developer is here tonight, so they could answer any questions you may have. And also on the resolution, we found a typo. In the section below where it states, "Now therefore be it resolved," in the first paragraph below that, the city code reference should be 22-902 instead of 2-902. So with that, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Since we're talking about that sentence that says that this be resolved, blah, 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 that the city staff is authorized to proceed with disposal of the 12 properties described as follows under the requirements of section 22-902 of the Billings, Montana City Code. one of your slides specifically said that if there were bids, or presumably a proposal to make this swap, that the city council would still have to approve the bid and presumably approve the swap later. Is that true? And if so, is the interpretation of this sentence that the staff is being authorized to help proceed, bring it back to council, but not to act unilaterally and finally by the staff to finally approve and pull the trigger on this? It still has to come back to the council.
Correct. It does have to come back to council. And in the ordinance, it talks about the property can be sold, it can be exchanged, or it could be donated. But that it would have to go through the bidding process. So in this case, the developer would most likely propose an exchange, the 4 parcels in green that I showed you earlier, in exchange for the 9 parcels that were in red, with the 3 additional parcels being donated to the county to improve Alkali Creek Road.
Okay, so this is a procedural resolution. It doesn't commit the council to anything other than to proceed with the notice process and seek bids.
Correct. That is correct. Yes.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor, for that clarification on that. So will how will the bid price, will it again be sealed bids, or how is that process going to take place then?
Yeah, it's typically sealed bids. We would advertise it as the usual process in any bidding. Those bids would be sent to the city clerk. They would be opened on a designated day and time and read aloud. And then we would review those bids, bring them to council with a recommendation.
Okay, Mayor, quick follow-up. So will the bid, I'm assuming when you put out the bid, it's going to kind of indicate all parcels, or would they have to buy, if you got 2 or 3 people want to buy parcels out there that we're going to, vacate or put up for bid, would the Parks Department entertain selling some of those to individuals who want to buy some of the parcels individually? Or would you all have to do an all-inclusive package?
Well, we would propose that each parcel be put out there separately for bids, so they could bid on any one or all. But of course, the results of those bids would come back to council for their final approval.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, so I'm confused. If we're going to put all 9 of those parcels out there for bid, and somebody can bid on 1 parcel, and if they have the winning bid for that parcel, they can basically nullify this whole replatting because nothing would then go through. We wouldn't be able to do this land swap, and so the county would then reject the plat?
I guess theoretically that could occur. But again, council would have the final say-so on what bid they would accept.
Is the developer going to bid on these, or are they just going to watch the process unfold, and then if nothing comes into the city, then hope that we go forward with the swap? Or do they have to bid on them as well?
My understanding from conversation with the developer, and they're here tonight, they could elaborate on this, but my understanding is that they would propose as their bid an exchange the 4 parcels in green that was on the map in exchange for the 9 parcels that was in red.
Thank you. If I could,
Councilor Rupert, go ahead.
Theoretically, anybody could come forward with a land swap proposal as part of this bid. It doesn't have to be a cash bid, in other words. Somebody could say, I've got some land on the west end I will trade you for this land here on Alkali Creek.
Well,
So, Councilmember Rupsis, I mean, just to kind of clarify, yes, somebody could certainly do that, but then it's up to council. Staff would bring your recommendation, but it's up to council. We don't have to take the highest bidder. I mean, what's the best and most, responsive bid that comes in? I mean, if this is the land swap that the developer's probably going to propose is the best and most responsive, you could certainly pick that. If it was these 9 parcels for 9 parcels out in the west end, council would have to weigh that. What's the best use of a swap like that? So that would be the council's prerogative at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions, Councilmember Princeton?
Oops. Well, I guess, I don't, maybe this is what you're getting at, because what I see it is kind of like it's set up to take this exchange. We're not truly bidding, because we already know what the outcome is going to be.
So, Councilmember Purrington, I would say no. I mean, it's one of these things, we could have just brought you just a resolution to dispose of this land and not given you any of this development information, but I'm sure you would have been asking those questions. Well, why are we going to get rid of this? What are we going to do? So it was kind of those things we'd lay out. Here's what is bringing this for us to come and advertise competitively these lots. And, this is what spurred that movement to come. But again, I mean, yeah, if there's another developer out there, another offer that the council deems, more responsive, better use for exchange of our land or a price for that land or something, then no. I mean, the council can choose to take that offer and disregard kind of what we've laid out here. But we thought it was a good idea to tell you what spurred this, tonight to come to council to ask to dispose of those parcels.
And Kevin, just to clarify, it's unlikely that there's going to be a competing bid because the adjacent landowners, who would normally be the ones who are motivated to bid, are the developer. In this case, they already own all the property around it, so it's hard to imagine, unless somebody just really wanted to be the developer's worst enemy, and then that's a theoretical possibility of a bid. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have an idea, do we have a baseline for what these hunks of land should be worth?
Well, we have done a comparative, excuse me, the developer has done a comparative market analysis, and they have given a valuation to each of the 9 parcels that they would like to purchase. They also have done a valuation on the 4 parcels that they want to exchange for the 9 parcels.
Councilor Boyette?
But we, the city, haven't done anything, correct?
No, we have not.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bernice?
Thank you, Mary. Mike, you mentioned the letter or the evaluations. Then I think we got a letter late in the day. Could you summarize what the valuation total amounts are between the exchange? If this, again, this is the exchange on that, which is kind of, again, because we're not approving the exchange. Anyway, go ahead.
I'll need to pull that up.
I know. It's really poorly.
So the valuation through the comparative market analysis for the 9 parcels totals $169,996. The valuation for the 4 parcels that the developer would likely propose as an exchange comes up to $177,117.
So roughly the same, give or take a little bit, especially because this is not this is a real estate comparison, not necessarily appraisals, correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
This is not an appraisal valuation. This is just a market analysis by a real estate agent.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
And Mark, did Miles do the evaluation on the 4 parcels as well?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and the broker is in the audience if we have questions for him, I'm sure.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other questions, Councilmember Rupsis?
Mark, could you talk about, I think it's pretty obvious what the benefits to the developer would be. What are the benefits to the city? The only thing I could see from the letter that came out was we wouldn't have to back our trucks out along along the easement? Was there other benefits to the city I'm missing?
Well, for as long as I've been here in the city, 17 plus years and before, there's always sort of been the idea or the drive to acquire parkland along the Alkali Creek corridor. And as you go along there, there's various portions. Some are wider than others, some are rather narrow. I think that it's kind of a placeholder for possible future development. That could maybe be a trail development of some sort. In those wider pockets, it could be maybe developed land for the citizens in those neighborhoods along there. It also could be developed as part of a natural area, for viewing, wildlife and things like that.
Well, I think the question, though, is specifically, we certainly understand the value of having land along Alkali Creek, but the value of consolidating and having the larger piece versus the numerous 9 pieces, going from 9 to 4. Councilmember Rupes, that was your question, is that correct?
Yeah, essentially, what you described was the benefit of what we've been doing, which of course made sense until we crossed over to the timbers and didn't follow that over there. I think we're not actually deriving any additional benefit in terms of the parkland development or opportunities through this exchange, are we?
Well, I think there's probably some benefit to the east portion of that property where we'll have some wider land that we could probably do more than maybe just a trail or something like that. Also, that does secure that land so that Public Works can have better access to service the utility corridor that goes through there. Without having to back up the truck for a quarter of a mile, yeah.
And Mark, could you comment on the maintenance? I assume having to maintain 9 small parcels would be the Parks Department worst nightmare. We're always told that it's extremely inefficient to do so, but I just want to give you an opportunity to comment on that. But also, do we still have adequate access to that corridor? One advantage of the 9 parcels is a lot of them are at the ends of cul-de-sacs, at least based on the old platting. I don't know how it compares to the new county plat, but will we have adequate access to that strip of Alkali Creek if we give up these 9 parcels?
Yes, I believe we would have adequate access. See, I think I may have an additional map here. Can I get back to the slide deck? Sorry, this is a little sluggish. Well, actually, I guess this one will do. As you can see in the green there, down towards the south and east end, basically that would more fully open up that parkland right to the road. So there would be some pretty easy access off of that road, and those smaller parcels there could probably be developed for some sort of public access down to the creek and that parkland in there. Also up on the north end, or the northwest end, it also comes to the road there, and so there could be access in there, in the future.
Okay, you have to get across that road on the east boundary, I guess, from the parkland, but with a crosswalk, that's doable, presumably.
Actually, that, I don't know if there's a pointer on this or not. Oh, there we go. This area right in here, that road probably won't be developed. My understanding is that would remain as a right-of-way, but it would help to facilitate stormwater management.
Okay, so there'd be easy access from the parkland into the Alkali Creek corridor?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Gulick, Boyette, and Tidswell?
Thank you. Mark, is one of the options thought for the Alkali Creek that we might be a trail that we want to develop along it? And if so, I mean, it looks like it's really tight with the parcels we're giving to the developer. I don't know if we'd be able to, it looks like just the stream itself fits through, but not any kind of trail. Is there any sort of master plan that suggests that we're interested in putting a trail through there?
Well, we haven't really studied anything like that. I think as when the time is right to move forward, we would certainly need to do a corridor study, do a master plan of that, kind of see what our opportunities and constraints are.
I guess in the absence of having that study done at this point, it seems like we're foregoing the opportunity to have that trail, I guess, if we give up this land at this point, which, if we had a plan that said, hey, that's not going to be a problem because we got this figured out, but in the absence of a plan, it concerns me a bit. Again, I don't know exactly how wide that little zone is that we're seeing in terms of scale, but it just seems like it would be really hard to get a trail through there.
Councilor Gulick, are you talking about this little?
Yes. Just between the orange, that part too, honestly, too. But yeah, we've kind of created this little catacomb through there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Council member Boyette and then Tidswell.
Yes, sir. Since the developer's here, I'd kind of like to get his 2 cents on this, just to hear both sides of this. If he could come forward and just tell us what you think.
Sure. Come on forward and Miles, if you can just identify yourself and
Sure.
Tell us your role.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The main reason, as you see the large green area in the upper right-hand corner there's a storm drain that comes down off the rims from the houses to the north. And it actually was designed too small, and the pressure blew the top off that storm drain. And now there's a cavity there from erosion that the city has already done some work on. And also there's some drainage that comes off the rims from the airport side down to those smaller green parcels there. So the advantage of the city having those park areas, and we appreciate the effort that the Parks Department has made in visiting with us about this whole situation. Like was mentioned earlier, it allows city equipment to do a turnaround in that large park area. Let's go to the red areas. The main reason that those were expanded and requested is the terrain. There's draws and coulees and a lot of brush and very difficult to walk in. A third factor or a benefit is the widening of Alkali Creek Road. In that upper left-hand corner, the county has gone ahead and improved a new bridge and approach. And currently, it was improved on the Boyer property. So in this whole transition or exchange, we're trying to get that property into the county. And the Boyers have offered to give another 10-foot along Alkali Creek Road from the bridge all the way to the lower right-hand corner that you see there. They are giving another 10 feet. Mainly so the city can go ahead and maintain Alkali Creek Road. So the amount of acreage, to give you an idea, as Mark mentioned earlier, the city's amount is $177,117. But the Boyers are also adding another $34,900 to that, to the county, which means that their contribution in land is $212 and right at $212. So the whole purpose here was to do some exchanging. The first step that has to be done is to put those 9 red parcels out for somebody to bid on and see what comes in. The ideal from the Boyers' standpoint is that nobody will offer on them. And their offer, like was mentioned earlier, will be an exchange offer for the red areas to go to the Boyers and the green areas to go to the city, which accomplishes, as the Parks Department has said, it is a plus for that storm drain and sewer and water so that it can be maintained by the city a lot easier. Do you folks have any questions that I can help
Miles, I've
resolve?
got, I call it a question or a suggestion. Since we're only moving this forward if this is approved for the bidding process, I guess my suggestion would be that, because I'm hearing a lot of concern about the viability of a trail going through here, which would add value to the developer's property. I think we all agree that this area should have a trail. That as part of that bid, even if the city were to transfer the red, there's some potential choke points in here. You see how narrow that is? And I'm sure our staff will be looking to tell us exactly how wide those are and whether a park trail is still viable through there. It certainly is now because the red takes up a lot of that space. But if as part of your bid or the Boyers bid, it included a guarantee of a trail easement through those parts, even if it's owned, even if the transfer is made, and we could be assured of the trail, then no problem. So I plant that bug in your ear. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It's clear.
Other questions, though, for Miles or comments? Councilmember Tidswell.
This question for the city. There was a comprehensive plan for the parks in 2017, 2018, and there was a listing of about 40 parcels that were, I guess the city sought to dispose of or divest itself of. Are these 9 included in that list?
No, they are. No.
They're not on that list. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Purington. And Miles, I think you're relieved unless somebody needs something from you later. Councilmember Purington?
Well, I guess starting to discuss that trails aspect, this subdivision is a county subdivision, correct?
It is.
And so why would the city be wanting to put a trail through or be concerned, for lack of a better word, that these parcels add to the trail system for the city?
Well, the land will be under the county's jurisdiction unless and until sometime in the future it gets annexed back into the city again.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ripsis?
I think, Councilmember Puritan, I think the parkland is obviously city land, right? So we can still build the trail through there on city property. I think the mayor's suggestion was that even though the 4 plats or the 4 parcels will be county land, he's asking that they consider including as part of their bid an easement that if we can't make it through the city land because of the contours of the creek, that they will allow that easement through what will be county parcels to continue that trail. Is that?
Yeah, whatever it takes to make sure we've got ability to have a trail through there. And someday that'll be in the city, and we still have city land to the west of there. Councilor Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a complicated issue, and I kind of wish we would have seen a work session on this prior to this, but Public Works is not here to answer some of my questions. I see Wyatt out there, but Public Works is gone, because we keep hearing about Public Works needing this access to the city drains and system like that, and this is the first we're hearing about the issue with it and what reason why we need to do it. So I'm wondering, and maybe Wyatt, you can answer some of this, but on subdivision regs, I mean, when they're putting in subdivisions and Public Works needs to have access to utilities, doesn't the utility have the right to have an easement, appropriate easement to access their utility to service it?
Well, they do have an easement currently. This is just capitalizing on an opportunity. It would be parkland or city-owned land around that. It would just make it easier for them to access. They currently still can't access it because they do have an easement to do so. This is just an opportunity to make it a little bit easier for them.
Okay, Mayor, a quick follow-up. Actually, more questions regarding Public Works on this. And if I understand, and Chris, maybe you know this, because we hear this often, if a development is within 500 feet of our utilities, then there's some kind of connection requirement, or the county has indicated they would make sure they connect to our subdivision or development in the city. Can you explain if this is even close to 500 feet within city services? Obviously, the sewer is coming down from there, so it must be within 500 of the sewer, but what about water and anything else?
So Mayor and Council, I do not, now I'm looking at our GIS map, I cannot tell you tonight how many feet we are. The reference you gave just a minute ago is a Department of Environmental Quality rule relative to authorizing septics or wells to be drilled or placed within X feet, and I have to admit sometimes they hear 300, 500, I don't know what the statute is, but there's a distance, and then there's some parameters that the state can use relative to whether it waives that or not. So yes, it is the case that where there are utilities within a reasonable distance, the standard is to have that property connect to the utility. But yeah, so that's the general.
So it looks like our planning director, Wyatt Friday, might want to comment on that. Is that true, Wyatt?
Mayor and Council, yeah, it's correct that there's a 500-foot distance, and it is specifically, as Chris just described, for water and sewer utilities, and they would look at that at the time that the property was going through the DEQ review process to do a septic well or cistern. Since the city de-annexed this property, when they go through that process, that will be what, DEQ, if they reach out to the city, which they have done in the past, the city, we would verify, that the property is not in the city and there's not, it was de-annexed from the city, so that would be part of what DEQ would consider to develop those couple of lots that are eventually, if all this happens as planned, eventually there'd be several lots there on Alkali Creek Road. But it's not, it's just those it's water and sewer specifically that you're talking about.
And this is within 500 feet because it's immediately adjacent, is that right? Because it runs up Alkali Creek, or will it run up Alkali Creek?
I think, yeah, right now, potentially maybe not, except for maybe to a little bit further east as you get back to city limits on Alkali Creek Road, but eventually when the infrastructure is run up there, then potentially it could be. So I don't know what that timing will be.
Okay, at least some of the lots might be. Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, thank you. And while you're up there, so if this is developed with this county subdivision, I would assume somehow through the county, is there the same regs as far as development of street and dedication of street and trails and things like that the city has to make sure that Alkali Creek Road is developed appropriately within the county for bike trails? And do they follow the same kind of standards the city do?
Councilmember Anise and Mayor and Council, some of the requirements and standards are a little bit different. We certainly look at trails, parks, trails, those types of things, which is part of what this is all trying to kind of work through with the park that's still going to remain in the city in that area. In terms of that frontage along Alkali Creek Road, that would also be something that would be looked at regarding future improvements to that whole corridor, and what this, depending on when this property develops and what the city and county are doing along Alkali Creek Road, we'd be looking at both the street and then, curb, gutter, sidewalk, or whatever those elements would be.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mayor. One more question about if they did put a trail in under this subdivision regs, doesn't the property owner typically have to maintain that trail versus if it's put in by this city or county, then we have to maintain it? Or is that not the case?
Councilmember Anise, so if we're talking about a future trail through the park land, like a corridor trail like that,
or along Alkali Creek Road, either one.
So, well, if it was along Alkali Creek Road and you were in the Alkali Creek Road right-of-way, that would potentially, there'd be the, depending on how that was constructed, whether it was paid for, developer paid for, and then if it's in the right-of-way, then maintenance, there's the normal arterial cross-section, so people are responsible for some of that maintenance, but if it's an arterial, then the city's involved, and in this case, city and county potentially, depending on, until that all gets brought into the city. If they were doing a trail on the parkland along the creek, and they installed it, then that would be in the city park land in the future. And so I think then we'd be dealing with a park maintenance.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Council, anything else before we come on forward? Before we open up for public hearing.
I'm Laura Boyer, and I'm the child of the developer. Anyways, I wanted to point out something about, you were talking about the water and sewer going through and why we're not connecting to that. And this was pulled out of the city into the county. We have worked with DEQ, and they are working through the approval process to do cisterns and septic tanks, because it's cost prohibitive. We cannot develop this property if we are forced to hook up to water and sewer. This will die. The whole thing will die. So was there any question? No.
Councilmember Rowan?
Our approval of this is separate from the question I'm about to ask, but can you just tell us what the future is of this land?
Okay, so
four parcels, right?
4 parcels, and it's agricultural, and it's RR like 1 and RR like, I don't know if it was 2 or 3. I can't remember. But my envision is these are 4 parcels that are going to be, it would be like a house and a barn, or a house and a shed. More of a, I don't know, rural, more of a rural.
Small hobby farm
What the
type.
neighbors are thrilled about is it maintains similar to the way the property has been for years.
Okay, thank you.
Laura, while we have you, you heard the discussion or concern about making sure that a trail could go through there, but concerned that it could get so narrow with these transfers. As part of a bid coming to the city later, would you anticipate any problems with including some sort of assurance that a trail easement could go through there to make sure a trail could pass through that stretch?
Running a city trail through county property.
Can we have some clarification? Is that not city park down along the creek?
I mean, they could do it through the, I mean, I don't know why, I don't know what the terrain is like, but by maintaining those red parcels, you're not going to have any more likelihood to get a trail than if you lose them. The terrain does not, from what I understand, Miles, you're not going to maintain a trail system through those red parcels.
Okay, because there's steep hillside,
Right.
something like that.
And I don't know how you do an easement, a city easement through a county property. That's your
Yeah, maybe Mark can clarify,
Yeah.
kind of, Mark, you've heard the discussion about the trail. Can you just comment on that more?
Well, yeah, the property is currently owned by the city, and it's now...
And the property is
meaning the parkland.
Not the red areas, but the areas between the red areas.
Well, actually, the red areas...
Well, the red areas also, of
currently.
course, that's what we're talking about. But along the creek is city land, city park land.
Correct, that was
It's not
dedicated
county land.
way back when.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Other follow-up, Councilmember Neese, you said?
Questions regarding the corridor. Councilman Gulick mentioned about the no study on this, and I think Dan mentioned the land wasn't being sold in the 2017 study, but it looks to me like we're really narrowing what you mentioned, that you wanted to have the Alkali Creek corridor area, and now we're really narrowing it and making it actually less usable for people, and maybe even more difficult and more costly. We heard how costly it is to build across drainage ditches and stuff like that, and that's what Alkali Creek is. It's a huge drainage ditch, and it flows quite often at times. And so can you explain, if we narrow this corridor up so much, how more expensive it will be to build trails through some of these more challenging areas?
Well, not having done a study on it, it's kind of hard to say what will happen in the future there. It's kind of a chicken or an egg kind of scenario here. We just have not done a study there to know for sure.
Okay, Councilmember Owen?
So just let's pull on that thread a little bit. If there hasn't been any real study or planning or vision done for this corridor, I mean, are these 9 red parcels that are being selected out here driven entirely by the development vision? Because they're really, I mean, they're clunky, and they're just a chunk here and a chunk there. So there's no, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's no city interest in exchanging these parcels. This is just what the developer wants. Is that correct?
Well, other than the opportunity that we would have of maybe aggregating land to the east.
No, I get that. I'm just talking about how these pieces have been carved out in their kind of choppy lines, and that's all driven by the development
primarily
planning.
by the developer.
So there's no city value to what's being proposed here for the red part, not the green part. These aren't like suboptimal lands or lands where you could never put a trail. I mean, this is chopped up entirely by the developer vision.
Pretty much,
okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Ripsis, and then we'll go to public hearing on this item.
Mark, I say this as you know, as somebody who's very committed to open spaces and sees the value in keeping those, but what's the benefit to the city in keeping anything west of here, let's say Sun Valley Road? We've already said with the timbers on the other side of Alkali Creek, that's all going to be P1 space, privately maintained. Why, if we're not actually planning for a trail system to go through here, we have no ideas, even if a trail system will be possible, given the land that we're willing to give up. Why are we even considering holding on to the rest of it? Why not just sell all of it?
Well, that could certainly be up to council to do that, if you so choose.
Okay. All right, let's open up for public hearing. Item number 5. This is your opportunity. If you in the audience would like to comment on item number 5, please come forward, and just ask to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Former Councilmember Ewald.
Frank Ewald, 2131 Phoebe Drive. How did the city acquire this land, this parkland? Was it when Boyer annexed this land to the city?
Yeah, you got to talk faster, Frank. No, sorry, ignore it. You're good.
Is that how the city acquired the parkland? And then you have to set aside so much parkland, but then when Boyer de-annexed, doesn't that go back to the owner then and it doesn't stay in the city? I'm not understanding how, if the land was given to the city when they annexed it, when they de-annexed, it should go back to the owner then, because there's no requirement to provide parkland if the city doesn't have the land anymore. Just a question.
I suspect that is how the city acquired the land. I don't know that, but I would assume so. Any further comment?
So I didn't obviously come to comment on this, but I just was interested and it was interesting. On former Councilman Ewalt's comment, I was waiting. But the idea that the developer who is, owns this property, obviously the city does own the parkway. It was given to them an annexation. For them to take and develop this property, I myself looked at this property. It was for sale a while ago and looked at the feasibility of development. And Ms. Boyer's correct. It's a very difficult property to develop. And unless they can, in my mind, make some changes to that parkland and giving benefit to the city moving that parkland, it's very difficult to develop. It seems like a win for the city to get the park that they would have, that makes sense to have, and giving up this other piece of parkland that, if this were to be annexed in today, the parkland wouldn't be like it is now. They would have changed it around to deal with the drainage problems that the city lots have created. They would have moved it and done it differently to be advantageous to them. So that was just kind of my thought, that as you think about deciding whether to give up this parkland, I think you really have to realize where it came from and who's trying to change it. It's not, it was given to the city. They're not trying to take it away. They're trying to shift it around to improve a property that, if they were annexing now or trying to improve now, they wouldn't have done it this way. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Any other public comment? Laura.
Sorry, Laura Boyer again. Something to keep in mind is that there's been a tremendous amount of work with the city on this, more meetings than I ever want to go to in my life. Most importantly, the county's already built the bridge, counting on this land on our property. The city is already wanting to widen their Alkali Creek. This is to their advantage. The city has a drainage. This is to their advantage. We have worked through all these. Without this, we have a ditch. We have a bridge on our property. Without this, it really makes it difficult for the county or for the city to widen Alkali Creek. So that's all
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Laura, we had a question? No, for city staff or for whom?
For whoever can answer it. So as I look at the cadastral, what I'm seeing is that the city owns parkland essentially from this piece all the way back down to along Alkali Creek to the point where Alkali Creek goes underground. And this would be the last chunk that we have. It goes back out and stuff like that, but this is currently the last piece that the city owns as we are moving west. Does that sound right?
Mark Jarvis, can you come to the...
excuse me, Mayor, we're in public comment. I call point of order.
West.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. Councilmember Tricky, I just want to make sure that there wasn't any public comment, and we'll close that.
That was a question. That was a question for staff.
Right, but I just want to close public comment. Did I already close public comment? No, okay, so I just want to do this and rule that out. So was there any other public comment on this before we get that question? Don't see any. So public comment is closed. Go ahead. Well, you got the question, Mark. Can you comment? Is this the westernmost part of that trail?
Yeah, along the Alkali Creek corridor, I believe this is the furthest west that we go.
Thank you. So as long as I've got you there, so the idea of those two parcels that are on the far east of it, that would actually give public access to Alkali Creek, whatever whatever reason or whatever may happen develop in the future. So that would be one of the compelling reasons to make this change.
It could be, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, council, we've had the public hearing. It's back to you. I don't know if you got, we need a motion on the table or unless critical questions for staff. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve resolution authorizing the disposal and donation of the parkland located in Terrace Estates subdivision, third filing as recommended by staff, with the correction of some reference to code that should be 22-902.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Purington. Okay, discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Neese.
I'm concerned this item is coming to us without a need that the city has or actually is even considered. The land is that's being proposed here to give up is going to narrow the Alkali Creek corridor, which I think is important to maintain. The land we're exchanging to, we didn't talk much about that. I think there's some photos sent around. It slopes quite a bit. You may be able to get a golf course or something like that on there, and there, again, you may be able to turn your trucks around there. But again, it's a pretty sloping land in that one section. I can't support the motion. I don't think this is in the best interest of the city. And then in addition to that, we're going to be having a county or a city park that will really go through the county. And, you know, again, this is the important corridor of Alkali Creek that we would want to see develop into the city. Now, if there's issues of why the land can't be developed in the city, that's something that I guess we need to take a look at in our regs and see if there's something to change to help with that. But I sure hate to see an important portion of the Alkali Creek access sold or given away or traded off.
Thank you very much. Other comments on the motion? Councilmember Joy, it's your motion, and Councilmember Gulick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I made the motion because of some of the facts that we have learned here this evening. And even though the Parks Department has not done a master plan on this, as we know, many of our parks are in need of master plans, and this wouldn't have been a high priority area to put a master plan. We're kind of flying in the dark in terms of how useful this property may be, but as we have learned, it's very rugged terrain. And what we could have in exchange for this is something that might be much more developable and has the benefits for public works to be able to use. So if you have drainage at the top, and that is our drainage, and it needs to be maintained, it only makes sense that we don't have the Boyers with a county bridge on their property and our inability to make improvements to the road as we need. So I think that, gosh, cities are developed in ways that are unexpected, that are sometimes unplanned, I think, absolutely unplanned. So it seems like we're working towards a solution in an area where, gosh, I don't know why someone would want a bridge on their property that the county built. So I think we're looking for a solution here, and that's why I'll support this motion. Thank you.
Councilor Gulick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I guess I feel like I don't have enough information at this point to really understand. It seems to me either we should have it be parkland that can take a trail, but if indeed if it's too rugged territory, then I don't think it would make sense for us to have a park at all there. I guess maybe to an earlier point, because it's not really, otherwise you can't really access it very well. It's just not a value to the public, it seems like. I'm not quite ready to make a motion to a substitute motion to table, but I might consider that, something like that. But I just feel like I don't have enough information to really make a good decision at this point.
Councilmember Rupsis and Councilmember Rowan.
I just want to confirm, if this goes forward, this resolution tonight just authorizes to put it out for bid, and any bids that could come back, any final action would have to come back before us?
That is correct, so.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and support this tonight then, but I hope when it comes back before us, we've got a bit more of the due diligence done on what we can actually expect to use this land for, or, if the bid comes back, with some creative things in there in terms of easements or even other potential options, I'd be looking for something like that. I'm very uncomfortable with where it is right now, but hopefully we can get some more intelligence about it by the time the bid comes back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Rowan.
I think I have similar sentiments to what's been shared. If you wanted to postpone it, I would certainly support that. And I think what has been indicated here in terms of the work being done with the city and the county is probably all true. But for me, not being able to see whatever the proposed new platting is, or understand why we're doing such choppy, strange parceling, that's really hard for me. So I can be persuaded in this similar vein as Councilmember Rupsis to go forward and just say, can you please in the interim explain this to us? But I would also be supportive of taking another week to get a look at that proposed county platting to try to understand how this makes sense, because right now it's not coming together for me.
Any other comments on the motion? Councilmember Neese? And Councilmember Joy?
Councilmember Rupsis made a interesting comment about why do we even have the park there? I mean, I think it was, maybe we should sell all of it if it's going to be county land, get rid of the whole lot, and then we don't have to worry about it. I mean, it's county, then the county can either develop it or not develop, or the developer can buy it, then they got, they're buying the Alkali Creek. So those are some of the things I think we should really consider, and the Parks Department should look at. If this is going to be county land, do we want to be developing the park through the county land long term, or is this the end of it now and sell it all? So I would support a motion to postpone it. I would support a motion to at least consider selling all of it instead of just piecing it out like it is, because I think piecing it out is going to really limit what the Parks Department can do in the future.
Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would love to take members of Council to some of the land that's been dedicated as park in Ward 3. Really, I would. The one that is between two fences on a property that has a gas line running through it, yeah. Ends in a creek with no way across, has no connectivity to anywhere. About the one that's on the side of an embankment that you can't even drive a tractor on to mow the grass, covered in weeds. I would so love to show you some of the dedicated parkland we have. We know, we have talked at length about some of the issues with the dedicated parkland that we've received. It's ugly. It's not usable. You can't even plant a tree on it. You can't have a bush on it. It's got gas lines running through it. So I absolutely know that it's a part of maybe a not so good history of this city that we have some really ugly dedicated parkland, undevelopable, unusable. So that's a larger issue that, I think that we've talked about at council and wanted to address, and that we've wanted to get to the point where we are more selective or demanding on developers in terms of what they're dedicating, because it's not usable for us. We can't even mow it. We can't get a tractor on it. You can't. So anyway, this is a bigger issue. What I see this as it is just going forward in order to put out those bids. But I see this as us trying to find a solution in a situation where we haven't got a really good dedication. So as it comes back to us, we'll see what is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make the comment that City Administrator Chris Gilski, and I'll support this motion because we're not doing anything that's a final decision tonight, but there's an awful lot of ignorance on a really important issue. I mean, a trail is no better than its weakest link. And if there is the ability to get people through here, could be priceless. If there's no way to get through there, then no, except for it may still have value as some sort of a natural area. But that's a huge question that we don't know the answer to here. So we cannot proceed with this with any sort of final decision without staff coming back and clarifying that. And I hope that's absolutely obvious here. So, and Chris, you're kind of nodding your head, so I don't need, I think we all know that. So, Council, it is now 10 minutes after our normal break time. Are we prepared to vote? This is our final item. It'd be nice if we could wrap this up without having to break and then just come back. Okay, are we prepared to vote? Okay, Councilmember Shaw, you're on board to proceed to a vote. So the motion is for approval of this resolution. Again, it sets in process the bid process. If the motion is clear, and nobody's asking for it to be further clarified, and there was the one change in the language to change the reference to the code section. Councilmember Neese, clarification on the motion?
Yeah, once this motion is approved, the staff will be obligated to bring back to us just these 9 parcels, not anything as far as looking at trails or selling it or anything like that, correct?
The resolution would only go as far as the resolution goes.
Picking the 9 trails the developer wanted to.
Yeah, as the resolution says. Okay, if in favor of the motion, we'll do a raise of the hands. If in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor of the motion, Council Members Shaw, Joy, Cole, Chiriki, Tidswell, Purrington, Boyette, and Ripsis. If voting in opposition, please raise your hand. Voting in opposition, Council Members Gulick, Neese, Owen. So I believe the motion was 8-3. So the motion passes. That concludes item number 5. We do have opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items now. So if there's anybody in the audience who would like to comment on something that was not on our agenda, this is your opportunity. Please come to the podium. Just ask that you tell us your name and address.
Frank Ewald, 2131 Phoebe Drive. Mayor, council members, I am here again to advocate for a cap on pre-releases and parolees being sent to Billings. These persons were sent to DOC because they are a detriment to society, not just jaywalkers or someone who failed to feed a parking meter. Billings has been getting a disproportionate share of these persons, as evidenced by the numbers of 680 plus to Billings and only 8 to Bozeman in 2019. Also by the number of sober living houses, 40 registered in Billings, and the city with the next most in Montana is 4, as per public safety meeting that we had in the library. If these sober living houses are such a lucrative endeavor, and these other cities in Montana are getting their proportionate share, they would have higher numbers of sober houses, you would think. Bozeman, let's see. When in the DOC, everyone in the state pays for their board and room. When sent to Billings, only Billings residents pay the cost. City Manager Kukalski has stated several times the costs related to these persons getting in trouble, which can run $100,000 to over $1 million. Probably why Bozeman can have more and better parks and trails, and Billings just gets more pre-releases and parolees. Numbers posted for recidivism at the public forum in the Doubletree last fall were 30% recidivism rate in 3 years and 80% in 6 years. This means we have a revolving door of persons of dubious character being pre-released or paroled to Billings. And once they've been here and they put their 6 years in and they get re-incarcerated and then they get pre-released again, now they were citizens of Billings because that's where they were pre-released before, and it's just adding to the problems we have in Billings. And adding to the drain on the public safety for up to 6 years, then back to DOC only to be pre-released again to Billings. Billings needs to make a statement that the numbers sent here are bankrupting us in safety, security, the image of Billings, danger to our police who meet these people on the street, and other public safety personnel, and our financial stability of the city. Please make a statement and place a cap on the number of pre-releases and parolees coming here. Try 300 as a place to start. No one has provided evidence that there is a state law or code that would prohibit Billings from initiating this cap. How many more is Billings ready to take before someone finally says, stop, enough, no more? Montana Code annotated 53-1-2022 does give DOC power to relocate these persons, but this code also states that these persons have to be under intensive supervision. One parole officer to 40 or 50 or 60 clients is not intensive supervision. I got a little thing I got to read here that it happened in Sacramento like a week ago, maybe, or maybe not quite. This was by the sheriff, the Sacramento sheriff. This is his statement. Smiley Martin, 27, was released from prison in February after serving less than half of a 10-year sentence for punching and whipping his girlfriend with a belt while she was hiding in her closet, despite pleas from the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office that he should not be released, as he posed a significant unreasonable risk of safety to the community. Just weeks later, he and his brother, 26-year-old Dandre Martin, were allegedly involved in a gang shootout in downtown Sacramento in the early mornings of April 3rd that left 6 people dead and another dozen people injured. The tragedy is just the latest example of what happens when society fails to punish repeat offenders. Sacramento County Sheriff Scott Jones told Fox Digital News, the best predictor of future behavior is past conduct. And violent people, they're going to be violent when they get out. That's what we've seen here, Jones said. So this never happened in Sacramento before. It's never happened in Billings before, but it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And the more we keep getting here, the better chance it's going to be. And an analogy that I was going to give you guys last...
Better wrap up.
I'm gonna. It's early. You got plenty of time. I remember spending until 11 o'clock here. So the analogy is when the bathtub is running over, you can't grab enough towels to keep the flood from going any farther. The only way you can stop it is turning off the tap or pulling the plug.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. And then can I, on another subject matter, please? I'll step back and then I'll come back on another subject matter. Okay.
Doesn't quite work that way, but there's a special grace for former council members. So if you can make it real quick, Frank, what's the...
Something that needs to be taken care of is how public comment on non-agenda items is handled. Last time we were here, the 3 people, the mother and the son who was an attorney spoke. They were leaving. I had to talk them into sticking around. They provided some really good information. But they sat there for an hour and a half and they were tired of sitting here. So in other cities, they either do it first thing before the council, after all the formality crap. And then, or how about right after break at 7:30, you shut everything off, take public comment on non-agenda items, and then everybody knows from the public when they could come there and be heard on different matters.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Certainly something we could talk about. I think it would require an ordinance change because that's set out in an ordinance, the order. Any other public comment on non-agenda items?
I have a question for the speaker, if that's allowed.
Any others? There isn't any, so we'll close that. But Councilmember Neese, you just
I had
wanted
a
to...
question for the former Councilman Ewald.
Sure, as long as it's quick and he lets us go home. What's your question?
So you mentioned the parolees, and I think we're concerned about that. We're working on it, and I think you mentioned it could happen here. I think it has, but you mentioned, threw out a number of 300, and we heard from our city attorney that intense supervision is dependent on the gradient of it's very, very complicated. I actually, just to let you know, I have been looking into this, and it's very, very complicated. And so I'd recommend if you want to try to move this forward, I would ask you, provide a number other than just a number of 300. Can you help us come up with a way, or do you have a way other than just throwing out a number of 300? And do you understand the complexity of how these supervisions are actually determined by the state?
Yeah, and Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Ewald, we still have an initiative before us tonight that could go on, so let's make this really fast, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as I stated, this never happened in Sacramento before. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen here. Greg Abbott down in Texas, he's fed up with what's going on there. You probably listen to the news. He's starting to ship people from Texas up to D.C. I don't think we need to have a justification of that number. I think we just have to have a number, and then something might happen. It's the state's problem. They're the ones that fill their jail and haven't getting public defenders, enough of them. They could get more parole officers down here to increase the intensity of that supervision, but this revolving door has to stop.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Good enough. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the regular part of our agenda, but we do have, we got this afternoon a proposed initiative from Councilmember Shaw. We've discussed, we don't want to get into this too much, but Councilmember Shaw, can you describe that for us quickly?
Thanks. I'll try and make this pretty brief. Hopefully this is not too confusing. This is something we've been talking about at council for a long while. So I'm putting forward an initiative to begin the process of establishing official council subcommittees for legislative relations and county relations. The legislative one is obviously the one that has the time pressure because that's coming up so fast, which is why I felt the need to get this in front of you, even though I couldn't be there tonight. So from talking with City Administrator Kukulski last week and then with the mayor today, the process, we've never established a council subcommittee officially since I've been on council. So the process is a little different than what we've done before of just kind of raising hands. We actually have to have a formal resolution, go through first and second reading to establish this. So to get to that point, I think we need to have a work session where we really try and flesh out some of the details of this, like who's going to sit on this committee, how are we going to determine that, what are those rules going to look like, and that's basically what I'm asking you to approve tonight, or asking if people are interested in moving forward with an official subcommittee. If the answer is yes, the next step would be a work session where we can flesh some of this out, and if the answer is yes, I would like to spend some time working with the legal staff and city administration to try and flesh that out, put together some information, what other cities have done, what this could look like, and look through really what our regulations say for what we need to follow. And then the next step would be after that work session, council decides, do we want to move forward or not? But because this is such a formal process, I felt the need to kind of initiate it in a formal way. And I just, candidly don't want to spend a bunch of time or ask staff to spend a bunch of time on something if the majority of council is not interested in learning more or potentially establishing an official subcommittee. So I chatted with both the mayor and Deputy Mayor Boyette. Because Zoom is so difficult, I'm just going to kind of turn it back to them to handle the rest of this discussion. But I hope that's the synopsis of this should not be a big complicated discussion tonight of what this would look like. It's just a question of, do we want to do this? And if yes, let's get the process formally started. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Shaw. I'll just remind council members, this afternoon you had by email, and I recognize you may or may not have had an opportunity to actually read it, but the core are 3 points under the summary of proposed legislative or staff action. Councilmember Shaw is proposing 3 things. First, direct city administrator to direct legal staff to work with Councilmember Shaw to establish proposed resolution guidelines. 2, present proposed guidelines and draft resolutions at a work session for full council feedback. And 3, put resolutions on the agenda for first and second reading no later than July. And again, this is all to create a subcommittee, according to this, both for state legislative matters. The title is Establish Legislative and County Relations Council Subcommittees. So in my conversation with Councilmember Shaw, she thought that actually before getting into the depth of drafting even a draft resolution, the first step would be to not do any of those 3 things, but just have a work session that's not at 8 o'clock when we haven't had a break to talk about the topic and just get this on a future work session to see if this is something that the council wants to proceed with. That was really would be the next step. I want to make sure Councilmember Shaw agrees with what I've just said in that, but the ultimate goal would be to develop, if the council agrees, proposed resolution, more detailed guidelines for this, what the subcommittee might look like. So, but anyway, next step, put it on, get it on a work session. Councilmember.
Yes, Mayor,
Shaw?
that's perfect. I would just add to that. My hope would be at that work session to have some information of, other cities have done this, we could establish it to look this way, just to give some topics to that conversation, but not just general.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Boyd, did you want to comment if you had that conversation or similar conversation, or before we open it up to the council?
Yeah, just that I don't think that we, the council, is doing a good job visiting with the county commissioners. And we've always depended on staff to go do that. I like the idea of a group of us trying to meet with them on a regular basis to get a dialogue. And the same with the legislature. I'm just wondering if this isn't not far enough, though. Could we not have more committees of us to do other projects rather than just these 2? Because there's got to be other things that we could get involved in without micromanaging the world.
Okay, so council reaction, Councilmember Owen?
So I have a similar thought. I've actually had multiple conversations with the city administrator about this, so a little disappointed that I didn't know that this was coming tonight, because I sure would have liked to have been part of those preliminary conversations. I do think there's a couple of additional committees that we're missing. I think that previously there's been a distinction made, and I think it's the right one, between committees that focus on what council does versus operational committees, and I think that's an appropriate distinction. But there's some work I think that we could do. I think council would be well served by having a budget committee. I think council would be well served by having a committee that focuses on how council operates, our agendas, our trainings, our new member orientations, all of those things. So I guess I would like to see this move forward. I would like to see it move forward with minimal to no staff work at this point. I'd like to see us go to a work session and really hash this out. I think council members should take the initiative to look at what sister cities and municipalities have done, to see what fits and makes sense based on everybody's different experience here. I think these need to be conceived of and driven by council rather than staff trying to guess what we might find beneficial. I don't think that's a super good use of time. They'll need to advise on the legal process of establishing, but I think the scoping and the purpose, that belongs here with us. And so I would love to see this on a soon work session, but I would love to see it with almost no staff work in the outset so that we council can really own this as something that belongs to us.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Purington.
Well, and that was the same thing that I thought of as I looked at just these different steps, is that rather than, because I knew that Jennifer's been talking about having additional subcommittees or ad hoc committees, whatever you want to call them, for council. And so I asked her, I said, well, can you amend an initiative? So I'm thinking at this point that this is not an initiative, but it is a direction for council or to staff to have this at a work session and to move forward. Because I think, Kendra, and I applaud you for, moving it forward, but I still think that it's one of those things that it's more than just those two things. So I would like to sit at a work session and, just as Jennifer said, to move forward with it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. Like Jennifer, I think there may be more opportunities here with the council being more involved in different committees. And I do thank Kendra for bringing it forward, because we've talked about this for quite a while. And this is great that it's here now that we can talk about it and move forward on it. But I do think, I agree with Jennifer. We have a little possible involvement with staff other than scheduling and saying, hey, this is a work session we're going to have. This is some of the legal stuff you have to be aware of. Just some of those things. But we as council members need to then take a look at and, decide how we want to do that. Take a look at what cities we want. So, or what other cities have done this and done it well. And so I do think we should move forward with directing staff to bring or to set aside a work session time that we can kind of gather around a table. If it's maybe a special session or an outside meeting of some sort where we can actually sit down and talk about some of these things. And that's why I don't know, maybe the city attorney can advise us on this. Is, I know we can't meet together at 6, but having, 5 here and 4 there, and pretty soon we got everyone meeting, that's kind of chain meetings. And so I don't want to violate any of those rules. But how can we best move this forward with as minimal city involvement as possible? Do you have any ideas as far as what we would come up against?
I would need to look into it. I can't give you an opinion.
Okay.
Without looking into it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Trickey?
I obviously would support this. Last week was the 3rd time I brought it up in conversation here in council, and I asked people for feedback and ideas and where to go with it. And Council Member Shaw stepped up and said, hey, I've got an idea and I'll write it up. So that's where we are right now. And it sounds to me like we have a consensus among council to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Council, are we prepared to get a formal motion from Councilmember Shaw, which will need a second, to approve this initiative? Any other discussion?
Can I make another comment, which to Councilmember Owen's comment? City Administrator Kukulski did not know I was going to bring forward an initiative in his defense, so he didn't notify you out of his own ignorance. But I just didn't want that to be anyone's fault. I just had the conversation, which is what I wanted to mention. But Jennifer, you were actually somebody that I thought of immediately. And at least what I'm hearing is that, and what resonates with me is that I also don't want staff to do any work on this until we're sure we need it or sure we know we need them to do it. So I guess what I'm hearing is that council would like to just move forward with the next step as a work session. And so I would make a motion for that. And then I would ask Councilmember Owen if in the meantime she would work with me, we could sit down together and maybe just put a little meat on those bones of what questions do we need to address, kind of just some of that just logistical stuff so that doesn't fall to administration and city staff to have to do.
Yeah, I think that all sounds good.
Okay, very good. Is there a second to that motion? Councilmember Boyette, no shortage.
Everybody.
All right, Councilmember Boyette. Any further discussion now that we have a motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Chris, you want to comment or ask us any questions, sir?
My only suggestion to you as you do the research, thank you. I appreciate don't have staff chasing a bunch of concepts. As you look at other cities, please be conscientious of your city charter and your form of government. This is not Missoula. It's not a strong mayor and a separate legislative body of 11 council members. So I would encourage you to look at those so that the research you're doing fits the form. And I think certainly in these areas that have been talked about, and some of us have had various conversations, I think it's a necessary, valuable opportunity, frankly, to figure out where does the community want to go. And ultimately, one of the challenges when you talk to those other communities, how do you select how many of you are going to be on these subcommittees? Because if you don't represent the greater good, or the greater good, that's the wrong term, the greater direction by the body, there's going to be a whole lot of work and effort that goes on. Especially if staff ends up putting support work into it, that may or may not get traction ultimately with the majority of the council. So that's one of the areas I would encourage you to try to understand as you do the research. How do you make progress in that area? And that's all that I would have at this point. So thank you, and we will get it on a work session agenda.
Okay, thank you. Before we adjourn, Councilmember Purington and Councilmember Trickey.
Okay, so I just have another question, because I've got about 5 initiatives that, as I understood, the direction that you were wanting to pursue was to do this through the priorities. And we still have not, I don't think, finished our priority setting. So rather than, I mean, I'm kind of waiting on it, but I guess if we're not going to move forward with a definite work session for priorities, then I'll just go ahead and start proposing those initiatives. I don't know a better way to do it.
So my only response would be 1 week ago, we discussed the priorities. Yes, you've heard me consistently say your initiative should align with and be a part of ultimately your priorities discussion, because it is typically resources that are being allocated to it, with the exception of the ones that you are totally taking on and not looking for any staff resources. And nobody's trying to drag their feet on that process. I would just ask you to be conscientious of the priorities and the value thereof. And if we start coming every Monday night and putting initiatives on the table, the message that sends to me is pretty clear. You want me doing, or whoever, Monday by Monday, what the initiatives that a majority of the council say we need to move forward on. And in a broad sense, that's not going to likely result in a very efficient, effective movement of work from your resources. But that's a broad statement. It may not be fair and adequate. It depends on the initiatives. But I just ask you to be conscientious of those and your expectations of who's supposed to stop what they're doing, or what time frame do you want the initiative carried forward on. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. One of the items that we have talked about also is getting people on boards for the council. And Councilor Trickey did reach out to Winnette, I believe, to get the list. And Councilmember Trickey, you want to comment further?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you were putting it on the next business meeting agenda. And the 4 boards that are currently have someone open are the Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development Board, the Big Sky Economic Development Board, Bright and Beautiful, and the Downtown Billings Partnership Board. Those are the 4 that are currently open.
I think we can absolutely put that on your next regular agenda. If there is any staff work that needs to be done, the 11 of you just need to determine who's going to represent you on each of those 4 boards.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Upsis.
Do we have a process for doing that yet?
That's kind of it. We'll try to circulate at least a list and clarify who's interested. That's the most important. If we had consensus before the meeting, that would simplify it. Beyond that, that's the easy solution. But I don't know that that'll happen. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that we had it on our agenda some years ago, and we just basically spoke up and said, I would take that, and no one had chosen Bright and Beautiful, and Mike Yakovich took it. So, I mean, it was this kind of, that's how it was, and some council members didn't ask to be on any. So, I don't know, that process was very loose and easy, so I'm not sure how much more difficult we want to make it, but it wouldn't hurt if council members who had a similar interest would sit down and talk to each other about it and maybe come to a Bright and Beautiful compromise.
Yeah, and I'll try to put out a list, and if you can email me this, to remind people of who've already has expressed some interest. And you're not bound by that. If you want to say, no, take me off that list, or add me to something, then we'll have that way to clarify who's interested.
Yes, do.
We're adjourned.